Check, 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 check. Oh. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, we lost some people. Where did everybody go? Let's try this again. What's up, Jazz? Huh. What happened here? What happened here? Let's see what is going on. Here we go. Oh, let's turn it down. Let's turn it down, Chris. There we go. There's a good boy. All right. Everything's Archie. Aphrodite, what's up? What's going on? How is everything in your realm, your stellar realm? All right. All right. My microphone was sacrificed to Mercury's shadow, as was so many other things. It's actually just the cord though, so I'm on the internal mic, so if it sounds a little less high quality than what you're used to, that's probably why. Magic Star, Brandon, what's up? Rob, what is up? What is going on? What is happening? There we go. There we go. People are coming in. People are coming in. Let's just go back to the homepage here. All right. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Appreciate everybody coming this early. I wanted to accommodate our friends across the pond. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully they'll be able to make it. I know this has been a very eventful weekend, so I understand if people are distracted by the things. What's up, Jessica? What's up? What's up, Thor? Thor at the door. Isn't that a Dr. Seuss book? Maybe I'm thinking of something else. All right. Let's see here. What's up, Besnan? What's up? How you doing? All righty, people are coming in. If you hear all sorts of noises and stuff, that's just because I'm on the computer mic, and it tends to pick things up a little bit more than the good mic. So. Pleasure to have you, sir. Pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you. We've got a lot of stuff to go through. This is a big one, and this is just to be, this is just a primer to this very interesting topic. Very, very interesting topic. And of course, I wanted to do this last October, but things tend to get away from you. I just want to give people some time to stream in, as usual. Hope everybody's doing well as can be expected. Let's quit this. There we go. All righty. What's up, Persephone? Glad to have you with us. Glad you are here. All right. Allergies are a little challenging today. All the rain we've been having, putting a lot of mold in the air. My cross to bear. My cross to bear. All right. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm staying in focus with this microphone, with this camera here. There we go. What's up, Dave? What is up? What's up? Glad you could make it. Glad you could make it. Magic Star, did I say hello to you? Hello? Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree. This is a good topic to get started with. Take our minds off of all the heaviness in the world at the moment. All right. Just scroll down. I've got it on white. Why does it do that? Night, what's up? Migraines, yeah. I've got a good migraine medicine I've been using. I forget what it's called now. But the thing about the migraine medicine is that it comes in these little blister packs that are impossible to open. And I just think, I hope I never have like one of my blinding migraines and I can't get the goddamn blister pack open. What I usually do is I use scissors. Have I seen Alex Garland's Men? No, I do have it in my possession now. All right, I have to mute manually here because I can't just. Yeah, hey, Mercury, baby, it took its toll. Mercury took his toll, for sure, for sure. Okay. I will not be talking about Alex Garland's Men. I thought about it, but it's it doesn't really. I mean, it is in some ways folk horror, but it doesn't really connect with the films that we're talking with, which are all very much of a piece. All very much of a piece. All right. Okay. Who else is here? Who else is showing up? Got a couple more people in. Just want to give people time to get settled. Hope everybody's comfortable. Got something warm to drink. It's getting very chilly. That October chill that I love so much. I always associate with the first Big Country album. Oh, yes, 1983. 1983. A momentous year for the world and for myself, personally. Of course, we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of the day my life changed forever. But we'll get into that at some other time, won't we? Won't we? What I should put links up to, if people should read my Synchronicity and Let's Dance essays, speaking of 1983. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm actually back on inhalers now because it's been really, really rough. And I notice it's helping quite a bit with my fatigue. You're in Canada and the temperature is that of summer at the moment. Where are you in Canada? I've got a lot of Canadian fans, don't I? I love my Canadian fans. Quite fond of Canadians. I've always been very fond of Canadians. All right. Let's see here. Okay. I just wish they didn't, they changed the postage situation. You used to be able to send things to Canada through surface, through ground mail. And now you have to do like airmail rates, first class rates. It's I don't know why they did that. I thought NAFTA was supposed to do away with all that nonsense. All right. Does anybody recognize the image on screen right now? Do you recognize that film? Let me know if you do. We're going to be talking about that film tonight, as you would well imagine. All right. Give people a couple more minutes to file in before we get started. Akigini, what's up? All right, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciated. Let me just mute again. Yeah, a bit congested today. Bit on the congested side, as you can probably hear in my voice. Oh, breathing is so important, isn't it? This is funny. While I was hey, what's up, Love to Camp? What's up? While I was working on this presentation, I was watching Out on a Limb, the Shirley MacLaine New Age movie, which was so bad. Oh my God, it's unwatchable. It's so horrendously bad, but it was kind of entertaining to watch and just sort of get that vibe, that New Age 80s vibe when it was all new. What's up, VV? What is up? Thank you for showing up. Appreciate it. Very much appreciated. Oh, I love when you guys show up. It's awesome. It is so much fun to have you here. Yep, people coming in. A couple more minutes before we get started, so everybody can make themselves comfortable and get settled. I was watching some of my old live streams when I was using the built-in camera. My God, it looks so bad. Oh, these built-in cameras, they don't last very long. Unfortunately, they tend to. Every iMac I've had, the internal camera eventually dies. So just keep that in mind. Cough again. There we go. Take a little drink. Alrighty. Alrighty, we got a lot to talk about, as usual. As usual. Some of these live streams I want to start making into like proper videos. A little bit better production. You know, unfortunately, the future is video. I've been blogging for so long that I'm used to print or, you know, HTML or whatever. But everybody says you got to do video now. Everything's sort of switching to video, which really bothers me because when I want to sort of just go through something, you know, I have sort of this speed reading technique that I have, and you can't do that with video. I mean, unless you play it really fast. But it's I want the information. I don't want to have to sit there and, you know, they always run the clock out because if they're monetized, they get more money that way. It's like, get to the point. Ooh, wow, we've got a crowd. This is awesome. People are coming in. This is great. I love it. I love it. Let me just see. Oh, my live chat is frozen. I'm going to just reload this. Oh, yes, the witch is right. The witch, yes. That's the one. That is the one. All right, couple more minutes. Got people still coming in. Glad to see everyone here. All right. Thank you, Ricky. I'm a traditionalist, you know. Something works, you stick with it. You know, the blog has served me very well all these years, so I have a very strong emotional attachment to it. It's in the 70s here in Montana. Wow, that's not bad. I think it's here. It's like the 60s here, which I don't mind. I like it's cool. Fall is one of my, you know, early fall. I just love. I love the changing of the seasons. It's just so beautiful. Drawing Osiris in the sky with chemtrails constantly. Oh my goodness. All right. Yes, sir. All right. All right. Okay. I'm going to get started here. Is everybody ready to go? Is everybody ready to go? We're going to get started. We're going to get this party started. So let's do this thing. All right. Let's talk about what folk horror is. Unlike other subgenres of horror, folk horror is difficult to define, despite what its simplistic description implies, from the emphasis on the horrific side of folklore to a very literal horror of people. The term's fluctuating emphasis makes it difficult to pin down outside of a handful of popular examples. The term first came to prominence in 2010 when Mark Gatiss used it as an umbrella theme to describe a number of films in his book, his documentary, A History of Horror for BBC 4. Yet the term was used in the program in reference to an early interview in which the director Piers Haggard said in Fangorian magazine in 2004 that his 1971 film, The Blood on Satan's Claw, was trying to make a folk horror film. Okay, so Piers Haggard is credited, I guess, with the coining of the term. All right, I thought I had, give me just a second here, what's going on here? Having all sorts of technical difficulties. Give me a second here, I'm sorry folks, just seem to have lost a slide. No matter. So let's talk about the whole idea of folk horror. What the folk horror is about rural repaganization, particularly human sacrifice. So it's about the old gods of the heath, being revived and inspiring otherwise good-natured and calm burghers to partake in barbarous rites, as H.P. Lovecraft would say. Now, I talked about this. This was the first pagan festival held in the first European pagan festival held in the New World. It was a maypole celebration in the town of my birth, of all places, Quincy, Massachusetts, part of Quincy called Merrymount, right next to Wollaston. I know this area quite well. A man by the name of Thomas Morton was one of these free thinker types and was selling guns to the local Indian tribes and cavorting with their women, and took on this large-scale kind of pilgrim Lollapalooza, let's just say. And it scandalized the entire Commonwealth quite a bit. Morton ended up dying in prison. But the pilgrims took to calling Merrymount Mount Dagon, which synchronistically enough, Dagon, center of Dagon worship was in Gaza. Now, this has been a theme throughout the past few hundred years. As we saw with Queen Elizabeth, she was initiated as a bard, what's called the Gorsedd Chimru in Wales, which is just basically a Christianized kind of bard, Druidry. And they've been going strong for over 300 years now, as we see here, keeping the old traditions alive. This was something that started popping up in the Revolutionary era, let's say, the French and American revolutions, when revolution was in the air and people were returning to the old gods, as we saw in the following century with the neoclassical movement. Okay, so the old gods never went away. All right, you had monks studying Ovid and all the classic Roman texts in the Middle Ages. The Renaissance saw a huge revival of the imagery of the Greco-Roman gods, as did the neoclassical era. There's actually an interesting book about how paganism and Christianity just basically coexisted for quite some time, and probably in perpetuity. Especially we're going to focus on the British Isles, for where the folk horror seems to centralize. The old traditions never really went away. They were just either Christianized or tolerated. Okay, but this was a bit different. the bards, the Druids, revived in 1792 in Wales. We're going to go back to Wales during this presentation. And of course, the Midsummer Fires in Northern Europe on St. John's Day, June 24th, which ironically is the day that the UFO era began, right? With Kenneth Arnold in the Cascade Mountains, right? So, yeah, a lot of these old heathen rural traditions never went away. And of course, the term pagan comes from paganos, which means the countryside. All right. So the reason why terms like pagan and heathen were coined was because people still practiced the old ways, the old folk ways in the rural areas. Okay. As we see here, Ireland, the wishing wells, still very, very popular, and the fairy faith and the sylphs, you know, and the dryads and the naiads and the elves and the fairies. Belief in these creatures never went away. In some cases, it still persists. So even up till well into the Christian era, these old folkways had a very powerful hold on people. All right. And England has all sorts of strange customs. This is the Morris dance with the hobby horse. We saw the hobby horse, of course, in the Wicker Man. Okay. So these traditions, this tradition in particular is, I believe, in the late Middle Ages. It's not ancient, and it's neither ancient nor pagan, but there are a lot of these kind of old folkways that persist in towns in Great Britain up until now. Right? One of which is this charming festival, Garland Day, May 29th, practiced in certain cities and towns in the UK. And we have the prince for a day being draped in garlands of flowers, okay, and taken on a horse down to the ocean. This festival was originally dedicated to Poseidon, the god of the sea. And of course, as I like to say, we all know how this story ended in the ancient times, or even maybe the not so ancient times. You know, if just let you know, if they drape you in garlands of flowers, get the hell out. It's never a good sign. And of course, Iceland is rife with belief in the fairies and the elves and all these sort of creatures. And they will avoid building roads in certain areas or constructing houses or whatever in areas that they believe that the elves and the fairies and so on live. The fairy folk, the good folk, the secret commonwealth, okay? So these beliefs and traditions linger on, certainly in the more far-flung outposts of Northern Europe to this day, all right? And Robert Kirk, a Scottish clergyman, wrote this book, The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, which he collected all the local folklore. He was a believer, and as the people he was talking to was very much a believer in the elves, fauns, and fairies and all the rest of it, okay? They believed that the countryside was filled with another race of beings. And there, of course, there are arguments that all these beliefs sort of transmogrified in our time into aliens and so on, right? A lot of the folklore of the fairies and the elves very much found its way into ufology. Now, the interesting thing, too, is that fairies and elves were seen as, let's just say, mischievous characters. They were not necessarily seen as our friends, okay? And of course, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, we had the Pagan Revival, coming on the heels of the Occult Revival in the Victorian era. We had the Pagan Revival, especially, this is from Switzerland, and Ascona, which is sort of the Esalen of its time. And Carl Jung, of course, was very heavily influenced by these people. Very much a revival of the old German ways, or what they sort of believed to be the old German ways. I think that was very highly influenced by Romanticism and Bohemianism. Okay, but this is really the start of what we understand as neo-paganism. Starts in Switzerland, Austria, Germany. Okay. And this book in particular was huge, huge. This book was used as a reference text for the making of the Wicker Man, but all pagan, neo-pagan, heathen, all these traditions draw very heavily on Sir James Frazer's work, The Golden Bough. This is a huge book that covers a number of different traditions. Modern scholars have, found his research to be questionable. That may be, I don't know. Frazer was a very dedicated Freemason and was very much passionate about reviving the old ways, particularly in Scotland. Okay, so Sir James Frazer's The Golden Bough, I mean, unimaginably influential book. And even, when you're talking about sort of the early days of proto-synchromysticism, people like Downard and what's the other one? Grimstad were very influenced by The Golden Bough, as was Bill Cooper, of all people. So this book was extraordinarily influential, not only in neo-paganism and occultism, but also in conspiracy theory. So very, very highly influential book. I'd say one of the foundational texts of the past 150 years, right? This book as well, that's Margaret Murray. She wrote the book, The Witch Cult in Western Europe, A Study in Anthropology. This book has been largely debunked by scholars, and her whole take on it was sort of proto-feminist, and she was the one really who created the idea of the matriarchy, the pre-patriarchy, matriarchy, the witch cults, nature worship. Again, I mean, not particularly well attested to by scholarship, but very highly influential and very much, I think it's fair to say in some ways that you could call The Golden Bough and the witch cult in Western Europe as the foundations of Wicca, all right? She also wrote a book called God of the Witches, and we see Pan there, all right? So there's Margaret Murray on the left, very, very highly influential. And very highly influential in folk horror as well, as we'll see. Gerald Gardner, yes. Believe he was a follower of Aleister Crowley and created his own sort of take on it. Wicca. This is the man who is largely responsible for the creation of Wicca, Gardnerian Wicca, as it's called. And again, his scholarship was questionable, but his influence is just unimaginable. Okay, Frazer, Murray, and Gardner just were absolutely astonishingly influential. And there's the book Witchfather, Life of Gerald Gardner, and his book, one of his big books, Witchcraft Today. And we see Moonclad. I think that was a lot of the appeal of this stuff, is that, you can get nude and take drugs and have orgies and call it religion. Why not? Why not, right? What's going to stop you? There you go. So Gerald Gardner, very huge part of this unfolding narrative. as is H.P. Lovecraft. So H.P. Lovecraft was extraordinarily well read and was paying attention to a lot of this stuff. And I think this all horrified him very deeply, because I think it influenced a lot of his stories, which I would argue are very much some of his stories are very much proto-folk horror. I know they're generally seen as cosmic horror, but I would argue that they're folk horror in some ways. H.P. Lovecraft's shadow looms over the genre, whether he likes it or not. There are obviously significant differences, but a lot of his stories seem to center on city slickers dealing with hideous eruptions of the prime evil in decaying rural outposts, which is pretty much folk horror in a nutshell, okay? From the Call of Cthulhu to the shadow over Innsmouth to the festival, it's pretty obvious exactly where Lovecraft was coming from. He was terrified that modern civilization was nothing more than a fragile veneer ready to flake away under the slightest existential pressure. And he was probably right. As cults and cultic practices were like the monster under Lovecraft's bed, always ready to pounce once the lights went out. Okay, so this is a very big influence on the development of folk horror. And this is a comic book adaptation of the festival. Man comes, I mean, this is just classic folk horror. I mean, classic folk horror. Well-to-do man returns to his homestead in New England, where the old ways are still practiced. Just the old ways here, a little more exotic than Celtic human sacrifice. The past is vivid here. The dark furniture, the old spinner in a bonnet, the infinite dampness that settle over the curtain. I fancy it is occupied. Okay, so this man comes to his old home in a rural part of New England and is invited to a festival, the Yuletide Festival, as it's called. So this is classic folk horror. Okay, this is almost prototypical folk horror. And moonless and silent, a monstrous procession as the dog star leers. And we see these people in their everybody's got to wear these, these hoodies, these cloaks, right? These cloaks. Everybody's going to wear these. And they descend in this building, this hideous staircase, spiral staircase, to this cave, this cavern, this hideous green light, right? And strange creatures emerge from the abyss, the strange creatures that emerge from the abyss. And it drives him insane. My people and old people, old when this New England was settled, and strange, dark, furtive folk from opiate southern gardens, now scattered, sharing only the rituals of mysteries that none living understand. So this is a classic folk horror. It's just that it got Lovecraftian monsters in it, all right? And of course, The Shadow of Innsmouth, another classic folk horror tale. Man returns to Innsmouth. Well, actually, he's on a tour here. He's touring Cape Ann, which is where Salem and Gloucester and Rockport are today. And he gave them different names, but he does use the name Newburyport, which is part of the same area. And Arkham, which some people believe is Salem, okay? And takes the train up and finds this weird esoteric order of Dagon. Dagon again, right? Mount Dagon. So I wonder if, I'm sure Lovecraft knew about Thomas Morton and Mount Dagon, right? And this converted Freemasonic hall where strange creatures descend or disappear into, okay? And of course, it turns out that these Innsmouth people who all have this strange look where their eyes are kind of almost on the opposite sides of their face are actually morphing, they're evolving or de-evolving into these hideous reptilian, amphibious creatures, sea creatures. But our poor Paul Marsh, our poor poor narrator discovers, he's told the story that the town was failing, or the fisheries were failing, and this man had come and offered this new religion, the religion of Dagon, and if they prayed to Dagon, gold and fish would just be jumping into their nets, and gold and all these riches would just fall out of the sea. The only problem is that they cease to become human. Okay. And Mr. Marsh discovers that he is a son of Innsmouth, and he is no longer human. I must return to marvel-shadowed Innsmouth. I must swim out to that brooding reef and dive down through black abysses, and there I shall dwell amidst wonder and glory forever. So again, this is the setup here is classic folk horror, but the payoff is very Lovecraftian. Okay. Now we get to the core of it. Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. Okay, this is a short story. I read this in high school. Some of you might have read this in high school yourselves. All right. Very famous story and classic folk horror. And there's Mrs. Jackson on the right. So the story is that at planting time, they have a lottery, and we see all these kids gathering all these large rocks and so on. And unfortunately, this is a lottery that you don't win, you lose. If you pick the black card, your number is up. Your number is up. Now, there was a short film made of this story in 1969. I'll just show you a few clips from that. Here we see the good town folk gathering with their boulders and their rocks. They even, give the little kids rocks to throw. At this poor woman who won/lost the lottery, she is the sacrifice to the corn god, to the gods of the field. Okay. She's like, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's a poor housewife, and she is stoned to death. It's a very short story, and you should read it. It still holds up. It still retains its value to shock, even though you now know the whole story. But or you can go watch the short film on YouTube. Ooh, you can go watch the short film on YouTube. It is very short and worth watching, and very chilling. And let me just say that I believe that this kind of thing, well, it's certainly practiced in other parts of the world, but I think it will be returning to the Western civilized world, as it's called. I think that this kind of scapegoating and human sacrifice, unfortunately, might be the default setting of humanity. And we're certainly seeing a lot of this kind of thing down in Mexico, unfortunately. The Saint Death, Santa Muerte. Okay. Human sacrifice is going to make a comeback. I don't mean to be the bearer of ill tidings, but it never went away in a lot of other parts of the world. Okay. Now, Christopher Lee. There was a period when you couldn't really call yourself a folk horror movie if you didn't have Christopher Lee in it, right? The City of the Dead, 1961, I believe. Look at that, X, adults only. That's before X became X, triple X, right? This is, I believe, is this a British release? I'm not sure. This might be, I'm not sure. I believe this is an American release. Anyhow, this is a very interesting film because it was made in England with all English actors, but it takes place in New England, which is very interesting why New England would have such a hold when British people have their own culture, rich culture and experience with this kind of thing. But it's very interesting because all the British actors use American accents, certainly a lot more convincingly than Americans would with English accents or British accents. Just turn this up just a wee bit more. All right. A young so here it is. The city slicker returns or travels to New England town. A young co-ed uses her winter vacation to research a paper on witchcraft in New England. Her professor recommends that she spend time in a small village named Whitewood, his hometown, and also recommends that she stay at the Ravens Inn, run by Miss Newless. Miss Newless. Yeah, the professor is played by Christopher Lee, of course. When she arrives at Whitewood, she notices macabre happenings, and soon things really start happening in earnest. She finds herself marked for sacrifice by the coven of undead witches. It seems that the innkeeper is actually the undead spirit of Elizabeth Selwyn. Selwyn, do you remember Mulholland Drive, Diane Selwyn? I wonder if that's where Lynch got the name. And that the guests of the inn are the other witches who have come to celebrate the sacrifice on Candlemas Eve. Ah, yes, classic folk horror. Classic folk horror. And here we see Elizabeth Selwyn burnt at the stake, and the very cheesy and bad auto transcription on YouTube. Charlotte people have made white food when they burned Elizabeth Selwyn in 1692. What? Yeah, that's bad. That's bad transcription. And this is poor Nan being set up for sacrifice, of course. And then we see that the witches, the good town folk, are actually the shades, or the possessed by the shades of the spirits of the dead witches. Of course, this ties back to Salem and so on, the Salem witch trials. And of course, the priest, the minister, who is fighting alone against this scourge, the one man who can stand against the scourge of the witches, right? So yes, this is just classic folk horror, and it's still pretty entertaining. But the thing that you start to notice is that a lot of these films sort of follow a very similar template. Okay, and how many movies have you seen about the spirit of of a witch who was burnt at the stake and all this kind of thing? You know, there's like at least 50 Italian horror movies with that exact plot. All right. Eye of the Devil. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before, okay? This ties into Charlie Manson because this was Sharon Tate's first starring role, okay? Her first starring role. And then we see David Hemmings, who was also in Blow Up, in Blow Up. Sort of made his name. Blowout was the John Travolta remake, of course. So this is a classic setup, very similar to things that we see in the Wicker Man. Workers employed at a French vineyard quietly follow old pagan rituals that call for the human sacrifice of the marquee owner to save his crops during dry seasons. So there's a crop failure, and the lord of the manor, who doesn't even live there anymore, played by David Niven, is called back to be sacrificed to appease the gods of the fields. Okay, the gods of the grapes, Dionysus, perhaps, right? And there is very iconic imagery with David Hemming and Sharon Tate there. And here we see Niven with David Hemmings just looking extraordinarily otherworldly in some ways, I guess you would say, in these fields. And of course, the crops have failed, and sacrifices must be made to appease. So this is classic folk horror. Obviously, the same plot line that we see in Wicker Man. So Wicker Man is kind of seen as like the first of this, and it always kind of bothers me because, you know, in some ways Wicker Man very closely follows Eye of the Devil in some ways, you know, in the basic sort of plot line. The man who comes from outside to, you know, to the rural heathen area because the crops have failed and so on. Exact kind of storyline that we see in, and we hear those sirens going off. Yes, what an ominous weekend this has been, isn't it? which might be why I'm a little less animated than usual. But I'll try to keep everybody's spirits raised. And of course, there's Sharon Tate, her first role. Sharon Tate, who was not quite the innocent that she was portrayed as in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was very much involved in the occult and running a very dodgy scene on Cielo Drive with, apparently she would, well, according to a number of sources, she would pick kids up, runaways and so on the strip, Sunset Strip, bring them back to Cielo Drive, and all sorts of nastiness would ensue, okay? Would ensue. There's another film that we should talk about. Isn't quite folk horror. It's more cult horror. Actually, we should do a cult horror thing, but called Ritual of Evil, which is very much inspired by the Cielo Drive scene. Unfortunately, it came out before any of that stuff was ever known to the public. So you wonder how that information got into the producer's hands, okay? And occultists Alex and Maxine Sanders advised on the film on Eye of the Devil and were said to initiate Sharon Tate into the craft, which would not surprise me. Very troubled woman. Very troubled woman. Led a short and unhappy life and died a horrible death, unfortunately, at the hands of the Manson family. It seems that evil spirits were kind of stalking her whole life, but that's a topic for another conversation, okay? The Witches. Joan Fontaine, Broadway Mary, Joan Fontaine, advertises on a downtown train. The Witches. Now, this story was written by Nigel Neal, who is best known for creating the Quatermass stories, okay? It could be, well, we are going to talk about one of the Quatermass stories in this discussion, so I won't blow the lead there. But following a horrifying experience with a cult in South Africa, a school teacher moves to a small English village only to discover that black magic resides there as well. Yes, there were a number of these kind of films. I talked about the film that I recommend everyone watch called Burn Witch Burn, with aka Night of the Eagle. Just a fantastic film, very entertaining and very, I don't know, revealing perhaps? I don't know what the terminology I would use is. Just turn this up a little bit more. All right. So, a lot of mind control. So this is the interesting thing with a lot of these pictures is that mind control is often sort of a plot device, if not actually a subplot. And this young girl here is being mind controlled by the coven, okay, set up to be a sacrificial victim. All right. As we see here, okay. So this is the essence of folk horror, that particularly in rural areas, things are not as they seem. People do not believe the things that they profess to believe. They have another underground, literally underground parallel faith, okay? This is the essence of folk horror, and we see that here in this film here. And a lot of people who talk about the folk horror genre do not sort of talk about these earlier examples of it, right? Curse of the Crimson Altar, aka the Crimson Cult. Again, another classic setup, and very similar to City of the Dead, where we have the spirit of a executed witch return, start making deals and buying souls and so on. Of course, this Christopher Lee, yes, and Boris Karloff. This was the last picture he made. There was talk that this was the picture that killed Boris Karloff because he died, I believe he died while the film was being made. He got sick on set and passed away, okay? But this is a very entertaining film and written by Henry Lincoln. Does anybody remember who Henry Lincoln is? Henry Lincoln was one of the co-authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail. all right, which inspired the Da Vinci Code. Yes, Henry Lincoln started his career writing scripts for Doctor Who, of all things. And there's Lavinia there. Who's this actor? Barbara Steele, of course. Yes, very iconic, well-known costume. Now look at how similar that costume is to that hideous edifice that was installed in Madison Square in New York this past winter. Okay, maybe that wasn't a good idea. Okay, maybe that wasn't a good idea. But very dark, very dark. This stuff is real, people. It just doesn't work the way people think it does because it's a software issue, not a hardware issue. Hollywood presents all this stuff as a hardware issue when in fact it is a software issue. All right. Again, Boris Karloff, last film, actor named Mark Eden, who would not be out of place in a Guy Ritchie film, sort of a Cockney bruiser, you know, one of these types. You kind of character that, you know, if this movie was made today, or if this movie was made, say, 20 years ago, Ray Winstone would play this role. He's very much a Ray Winstone type, you know, Cockney guy, probably pretty good with his fists and so on. Probably skirted the law, you know, the boundary between law and outlaw during his life. Okay. And I mean, this is a classic. You know, you come back for the big pagan revanchist holiday celebration, and he comes back to find his brother. He doesn't realize that his brother had been killed, because of his deal with the devil, and discovers this cult and all these the secret society of men who worship Lavinia, the executed witch, right? And of course, it's Christopher Lee. Yes, how can we not have Christopher Lee in one of these pictures, right? So, the Unholy Trinity of folk horror. Okay, the trilogy, often known under the banner the Unholy Trinity, and it's not actually a trilogy. It's people put these films together, but they were, made at totally different times by totally different people. Consists of Michael Reeves' Witchfinder General, 1968, Pierre Haggard, who we talked about before, The Blood on Satan's Claw, and Robin Hardy's The Wicker Man, 1973. The imagery has since defined all things old and weird about Britain. It is in their narratives where folk horror becomes defined. All three films work on emphasis on landscape, which subsequently isolates its communities and individuals, skewing the dominant moral and theological systems enough to cause violence, human sacrifices, torture, and even demonic and supernatural summonings. Okay? Again, this is the essence of folk horror. So the first of these pictures is Witchfinder General, which I saw when I was a kid, and it absolutely traumatized me. If you've seen it, you know why. And this is actually based on a real story, based on a real person, and from the witch hunts, which arose in the wake of the English Civil War. Okay, so there was this was a moral panic that arose during a time of very deep and existential crisis in England, the English Civil War, the Roundheads and the Cavaliers. Okay, you've seen the movie. What's the movie? Oh, never mind. Let's go forward. England. So this is the plot line. England is torn in civil strife as the royalists battle the parliamentary party for control. So that's the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. This conflict distracts people from rational thought and allows unscrupulous men to gain local power by exploiting village superstitions, which actually happened. One of these men is Matthew Hopkins, who tours the land offering his services as a persecutor of witches. Aided by his sadistic accomplice, John Stern, he travels from city to city and wrenches confessions from witches in order to line his pocket and gain sexual favors. When Hopkins persecutes a priest, he incurs the wrath of Richard Marshall, who is engaged to the priest's niece. Risking treason by leaving his military duties, Marshall relentlessly pursues the evil Hopkins and his minion Stern. Hopkins was a total fraud. He went around saying that he had been licensed by the Parliament to ferret out witches. That was a just absolute lie. He was just a con man. And unfortunately, a lot of people, innocent people, died because of this man's machinations. Okay. And, here we see the classic witch drownings. This is a brutal film. This movie retains its power to be rather hard to watch. Okay, this is the cruelty that we see in this film feels very real. No, I'm not saying it was real, but it's very aptly depicted. And of course, this scene, if you've seen the film, needs no explanation. This scene, I think, was the scene that really did my head in. I remember watching this. It's over my friend's cousin's house, and we were watching this in the basement. And it just really messed my head up. I think I was like 7 or 8, way too young to be watching a movie like this. But there was on Creature Double Feature, which was on Saturday afternoons on Channel 56. When it was so it was called the Witchfinder General in England, and then Roger Corman bought it, American International Pictures, and called it the Conqueror Worm, and said it was based on an Edgar Allan Poe story. It's weird marketing. It's like, why? Like, what was this all about? Just bizarre. I don't know. Witchfinder General is a pretty metal name. I think you probably could have had like a hit movie. I'm not big on period pictures. Okay, I particularly with those accents. I really dislike those sort of Shakespearean accents that you see in these pictures. I'm not a big fan of this movie, but that's neither here nor there. But it's kind of foundational. In 17th century England, the village of a village slowly convert into coven of devil worshippers, the children of a village. Okay, and there's the rather strange, this very young girl who's naked and is being Satan. It's a little disturbing, and it was released, in a double feature with The Beast in the Cellar, a movie that absolutely nobody in the world remembers, do they? The Blood and the Beast in a chill-filled festival of horror. Yes. So the story goes that this skull is found, this rather leering and hideous skull is found. It's said to be the skull of Satan. And this inspires all the children of the village to become witches, led by this woman who looks eerily like the actress and model Cara Delevingne, if you know her. She was in that movie, what was that movie she was recently in? The Luc Besson movie, the science fiction movie. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to go into a little side note about that. But yeah, she really looks a lot like Cara Delevingne. Maybe Cara Delevingne is her relative or her reincarnation. And of course, here we see the classic tableau, the garlands, yes. So the Queen of the Witches. Again, I'm not a big fan of this movie. I don't see the big deal about it, but if you're, if this is your kind of thing, definitely check it out. I think you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. All right. The Wicker Man. Now, we talked at great length about the Wicker Man in our Burning Man live stream. Okay. And actually, I really love that poster. That is a beautiful illustration. That is some really, really phenomenal pen and ink work. Really beautiful, beautiful poster. So, this film, the setup. Religiously devout Scottish police detective is lured to this island known for its produce, and lesser known for its pagan human sacrifice cult. He comes to believe that a girl who has gone missing named Rowan Morrison has been sacrificed to the peas, the gods of the fields. Okay, and this is a rather iconic shot. This is during the climax of the film, where we see all the friendly, rather goofy, and sort of charming villagers wearing these frightening animal masks. Okay, on the May Day celebration, Beltane. Okay, the great sacrifice to the gods of the sun and the fields. Okay, the crops had failed. And of course, we have some ritual transgenderism with, or cross-dressing with Christopher Lee, of course, playing the priestess of the procession. And on the right, on the left, we have Oak, the hobby horse. We talked about the hobby horse just a bit on the Morris dances. Okay, so this is, for most people, when you talk about folk horror, this is the movie they're going to think of. Okay, I mean, this is the big kahuna. This is the rock star of the folk horror genre. All right, and interestingly enough, it's not really a horror movie till the end. It's first of all, it's a musical. People just burst into song out of nowhere. It's more of a comedy than anything else, and sort of a cat and mouse game with this pagan cult, and only becomes rather horrible at the end. Okay, so very entertaining movie, classic film, great music by an American by the name of Paul Giovanni and his group Magnet, who did all those great songs, Cornrig's a Bonnie and Gently Johnny, and all those great tunes, great soundtrack. And here we see Sergeant Howie dressed as the fool for a day, the king for a day. And of course, there are those garlands. Like I said, you find yourself wearing those garlands, get the hell out of Dodge. Whatever you have to do, just get out. You ever find yourself in a rural community and they're having a big festival and they just start draping you with garlands? That's your cue to leave. And there, of course, is the very iconic shot of Lord Summerisle and the Wicker Man. Yes, and again, a lot of this is drawn from Fraser, from the Golden Bough. All right. And of course, the ending, Sergeant Howie singing the 23rd Psalm, rather sort of improvising, I guess you would say. I don't think that's the actual melody, but does him no good. But he dies a martyr's death, so he is a lucky man in that regard. And of course, there's the ending. Yes, sirree. Poor Sergeant Howie, and all those poor animals, too, all those poor animals that are sacrificed. But there is an iconic shot, and an entire movement was built around that. And unfortunately, we saw the floods this year at Burning Man, and unfortunately, the attacks in Gaza started in a kind of Burning Man version of Burning Man on a kibbutz. So very, very unfortunate synchronicities there. Now, this is a bit of a curveball, but I would argue that Deliverance is folk horror movie. Okay, maybe not so much in the theology or the cultic practices, but classic city slickers go to Appalachia, go to the rural, the heathen, the heath, the paganos, the countryside, and find themselves in way over their heads, so to speak, way over their heads, in the classic dueling banjo scene. Okay, and I saw a video. The kid, the man or the actor who plays the kid, kind of has a strange look like that, but is not a simpleton like he's portrayed in this film. But classic scene, dueling banjos. And can you squeal like a pig, boy? Sweet. squee, squee. You know this movie. You've probably seen this movie. John Boorman, again, the four guys. I think they're from Atlanta. They go up the Appalachian to do some whitewater rafting, and they run afoul of the local hillbillies who don't appreciate their presence and make their lives hell. And there, of course, is Burt Reynolds with his compound bow. For a lot of people, this is the first time they saw a compound bow ever. This is sort of a great advertising tool for the makers of compound bow. And there's Ned Beatty, of course, and John Voight, and the other one that nobody ever remembers, Burt Reynolds, looking very studly in his rubber vest there. Very iconic movie. But I would argue that this is a folk horror movie, okay? And maybe gave rise to The Hills Have Eyes, okay? So again, this is more considered a horror movie because folk horror is supposed to have the religious elements to it. But I would argue that this is a kind of folk horror movie because, you have the folk, you have the rural backwoods people and their cannibalistic ways in this case. The Hills Have Eyes is a 1977 American horror film written, directed, and edited by Wes Craven and starring Susan Lanier, Michael Berryman, and Dee Wallace. The film follows the Carters, a suburban family targeted by a family of cannibal savages after becoming stranded in the Nevada desert. So we have the same thing, the suburban family exiting their comfort zone, leaving their comfort zone, and finding that the wilderness is peopled by dark forces. So this is interesting too, bringing it back to the folk horror elements. Wes Craven based the film script on the legend of Scottish cannibal Sonny Bean, which Craven viewed as illustrating how supposedly civilized people could become savage. Yes, people are hungry. Bad things going to happen. Now, this is a bit out of order, but same kind of deal. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 American horror film produced, composed, and directed by Tobe Hooper, co-written with Kim Henkel. Very similar, I'm sure had an influence on The Hills Have Eyes. Plot follows a group of friends who fall victim to a family of cannibals while on their visit to an old homestead. The film was marketed as being based on true events to attract a wider audience and to act as a subtle commentary on the area's political climate. That's debatable, but although the character of Leatherface and minor story details were inspired by the crimes of murderer Ed Gein, also inspired Psycho, and probably a lot of other films beside. The plot is largely fictional. Of course, Leatherface wears a mask of human skin, does he not? Which Ed Gein did as well. It's probably arguable that Ed Gein also had an influence on Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Okay, so these are seen as sort of classic horror, but I think they fall loosely. I think these are sort of folk horror adjacent pictures. Okay. Now, if you're of my age or older, you remember this. This was an event. This was back in the days when you had, less than 10 channels to watch, right? And 3 network channels. This was a movie of the week, a miniseries, Dark Secret of Harvest Home with Bette Davis, also from Massachusetts, okay? Bette Davis. A young Rosanna Arquette is also in this movie. I think it was one of her first roles. But again, couple and their daughter moved from New York to rural Connecticut. You could only get away with this in the early 70s. Rural Connecticut now is all millionaires. So, yeah. Thomas Tryon, who started as an actor and also wrote another classic book, The Other, which was also made into a movie. Okay, very similar kind of, not necessarily folk horror, but rural horror, let's just say. Thomas Trian's 1973 novel Harvest Home was adapted into a TV miniseries in the late 70s and taps the same vein. In this case, a New York family moves into a small town and discovers that their new neighbors still practice the ancient Celtic folkways. Since it's based on an American novel, it's usually overlooked by folk horror revivalists, but it's a solid example of the type. Maybe one of the more potent examples, actually. Shame it's not better known. This was from a piece that I'd written on folk horror back shortly before Chris Cornell's death, of all times and places. And of course, there's Betty Davis and the enigmatic blind man, who we find out later why he's blind, and the wife, the suburban wife, who finds herself being lured into this matriarchal society. So again, there's a Margaret Murray influence here, as well as a James Frazier influence. So definitely Thomas Tryon knew his stuff. I would argue that this miniseries, it's kind of I have it on a bootleg DVD, actually. It's kind of a lost classic, and the story itself, I think, is easily a foundational text in the genre. Okay, so this also, I think, influenced the remake of the Wicker Man. If you watch this, it's called The Dark Secret of Harvest Home. Okay, that's the full title, and I believe you can probably watch it somewhere online. But if you do watch it and you've seen the Neil LaBute Wicker Man, you're going to see a lot of commonalities. Obviously, a very heavy influence on that film. And it all climaxes with the big Harvest Festival, and the Harvest King, this big blonde, kind of looks like an Amish kind of guy, Mormon almost, this big blonde fella, big farmer, very devout follower of the faith, is chosen and is very honored to be chosen as the Corn King. And don't ever let anybody, appoint you the Corn King. And he makes love to the suburban housewife, much to the ire of the suburban housewife's husband. And how does it end? Oh, it ends like this. Oh, it ends exactly how you was expecting it to end. Yes, his blood fertilizes, the Corn King's blood fertilizes the fields, ensures a bountiful harvest. Yes, sir. Very grim film, miniseries, but very worth watching. Very worth watching. Very dated in a lot of ways. I think most TV movies from the 70s all have that same vibe. None of them escape the whole feeling of a TV movie, but very entertaining and very much worth watching. And like I said, very much, I think, an exemplar of the genre. So here's another. I gave you sort of the curveballs with Deliverance, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Hills Have Eyes. Now this is very interesting because Nigel Neal is one of the founding fathers of folk horror when he wrote the original screenplay for The Witches. Okay, Quatermass Conclusion, 1979, very much a 1979 feeling series. This is a mini series on British television. Very much worth watching. The special effects are absolutely ridiculous, but you don't care, or I don't care. John Mills plays Quatermass in this instance. It's a near-apocalyptic setting. Civilization is breaking down, and nobody can figure out why. Why civilization is breaking down is because it's under very heavy alien influence, and the aliens are drawing all the children and all the young people out to this place called Ringstone Round, which is kind of one of these stone circles, Celtic stone circles, in the English countryside. And there's this whole culture, almost like a Burning Man kind of culture, you might say. built around this, ringstone round. And unfortunately, we find out that, when enough people are gathered, they're sort of vaporized and their essence somehow is consumed by these alien tractor beams, or I don't even know what you would call it. It's never really explained all that well. But this is science fiction folk horror. So this is an interesting crossover genre. This is kind of a mashup between the two. Because if you took away the science fictional elements and just put some sort of devil or demons or something, it's classic. It's classic folk horror, but it just has aliens in it. So and here these gatherings, like I said, these periodic gatherings at Ringstone Round, and the kids are all rebelling. The cops trying to get them out of there. The problem is that society is broken down to such an extent that the police have no real presence. It's kind of like our cities today, major cities, what the major cities are becoming like today, right? And of course, Quatermass solves the problem, but not before, number of people are vaporized and such. But there's hope given for the future, I guess you would say. Interestingly enough, as civilization is breaking down, I mean, you see all this weird, degenerate kind of stuff on television that's very similar to The Masked Singer, if you get a chance to watch this picture or this miniseries. Holds up as story. Like I said, the production values and the special effects are pretty pathetic, but very much holds up story-wise. Nigel Neal, how can you go wrong? Children of the Corn. I have this on VHS of all things. Yeah, not a good movie. I think it's pretty well accepted as not a good movie, but it is incredibly influential. And they made, there's a recent remake of the film, and there was actually a series of sequels based on a Stephen King short story. So this is very much, it's weird because, like I said, it's not a good movie at all, but it is kind of a prototype for a lot of the American folk horror that followed. Okay. Oh, where we have these creepy kids who kill all the adults and worship the gods of the fields, the corn gods, and then we have this very creepy kid who actually looks a lot like the girl in Hereditary. I mean, they could be brother and sister. Of course, they're separated by a few decades, but that's an iconic shot here. Like I said, this is not a great film, but it is one of the founding texts of modern folk horror. Of course, Linda Hamilton, same year she starred in Terminator, which is really interesting. I think one of those franchises probably served her a bit better, but there she goes, crucified on the corn cross, so to speak. Interesting year because I believe this is the same year that Firestarter came out. So this interesting year for Stephen King adaptations. Firestarter also has a very heavy, obviously a heavy MK Ultra component to it, and it was obviously very highly influential on Stranger Things, of course, wasn't it not? Now, this is another sort of spin. Ken Russell's Lair, the White Worm, loosely based on a Dracula author Bram Stoker story. Okay, and talk about iconic imagery. Amanda Donahoe as the priestess. The interesting thing is that it is kind of like a worm. So basically, the story is that these young people from the city go spelunking in the countryside. And very young Peter Capaldi there and Catherine Oxenberg. So this is a very interesting cast. And like I said, Amanda Donahoe, who I believe soon after this went to star in L.A. Law, but discovered, that Amanda Donahoe is this sort of priestess / vampire / witch, A Cult of One, though, unfortunately. And this should have been called The Conqueror Aurora, right? This is and of course, the young blonde virgin is going to be sacrificed to the evil primordial beast, the white worm, but is defeated, as is the priestess. This is very, very campy, very, very silly, but very interesting as a period piece. So this is like, if this only had like a larger cult, this would be classic folk horror. But unfortunately, I guess maybe they didn't have the budget for it or something. I don't know. Now, folk horror kind of goes dark for a while. There are some things being made here and there, but starts to have a major revival in the 2010s. And this film here is one of the biggies, Kill List. Now, Kill List is a very strange and interesting movie because it doesn't really, it starts as almost like a classic British thriller, okay? Kind of like a darker version of a Guy Ritchie film, right? And what it is these two SAS assassins returned from Ukraine, of all places, and are kind of lured, they ply their trade as hitmen during peacetime, so to speak, and are lured into this not unlike Wicker Man kind of cat and mouse game that has a not unlike Wicker Man ending as well. I won't give it away. You should watch the film. But this is one of the hitmen, and very dark movie. A slow burn, as they say. I think a lot of people might find it kind of boring, but it has its moments. And if you've seen the film, this is an iconic shot from that film as well, right? As is this. So like I said, without giving too much away, without giving too much spoilers away, this is kind of a spin on Wicker Man, okay? Same kind of setup. Two men lured from the city to the countryside. This pagan cult. The imagery here, though, is much, much darker. And the storyline and the action is obviously much grimmer than Wicker Man. And of course, this shot here with these, talk about iconic, those hideous masks that they wear made out of corn stalks, just absolutely terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But this is one of the big films of the folk horror revival, okay? As is this film, Robert Eggers' The Witch, New England, 1630. New England's it's like either England or New England, William and Catherine try to lead a devout Christian life homesteading on the edge of an impassable wilderness with 5 children. So this sort of takes place outside of Plymouth Plantation. When their newborn son mysteriously vanishes and their crops fail, the family begins to turn on one another. The Witch is a chilling portrait of a family unraveling within their own sins, leaving them prey for an inconceivable evil. Interesting thing, just a little personal side note here, the Knowles family, my first Knowles ancestor, so to speak, at least on that side of the family, came to America in 1630. And from what I can tell, was an actual pirate. And the Knowles family spent some time in Plymouth Plantation and got out of Dodge pretty quick like, and settled the town of Eastham. So maybe I should write a folk horror story, and use my own family as characters. Okay, so this very devout but man exiled, his family, and of course the baby vanishes, went under the care of, or at least the watch of the daughter here. Okay, right here. Very beautiful film, but I believe this was shot like somewhere like New Zealand or somewhere not in Massachusetts. So it very much doesn't give you that Massachusetts feel, because, of course, where they would be, most of the trees would be pine. Down that area, Plymouth and so on, Kingston, Cape Cod, that area is mostly pine, okay? So this kind of forest would not, you'd have to go a little farther north to sort of find yourself in that if you were coming out of Plymouth Plantation. And of course, Black Phillip lived deliciously, which is taken from the Book of Revelation. Black Phillip, you know, seems to be a figment of the imagination, that this goat is actually Satan himself. But as we find out, it is actually Satan himself. Yes, sir. Yes. So this is the final shot of the witch. I'm sure most of you have seen this movie. This is actually a really cool scene. And there's Black Phillip there, lording over this, reminding me very much of that Goya, The Witch's Sabbath. If you've seen that very famous and iconic painting by Francisco Goya, The Witch's Sabbath, seems to be some sort of, maybe some sort of influence here. Yes, but this is, again, a lot of these films are slow burns. This is a very slow burn, this film. And it's sort of like this creeping sense of dread that really informs this picture. But, you know, very much part of this folk horror revival. Okay. Requiem. We're going to do an entire live stream on this. I'd like everybody to watch this series if you haven't already. This is phenomenal. At one point, Gordon had said that this was the best depiction of the occult in film that he'd ever seen. A lot of draws on John Dee and Edward Kelly, and you know, the angel summonings, the airs and the calls and all this kind of thing, and the black mirrors. Mirrors play a very prominent role in this film. So the story here is that this woman here watches her mother commit suicide just as she's about to give a concert. At, what's it? South Bank Center of all places. She's about to give a concert at South Bank Center, and her mother commits suicide right in front of her, and she finds this box of photographs and has something to do with the disappearance of this girl from a small village in Wales. And the mystery unfolds. Please watch this. We have the classic creepy British manor, right? You got to have these. You've seen a building like that, and God knows how many Hammer horror movies. I mean, all these kind of things, right? Classic setting for these kinds of stories. But there's a very heavy mind control influence here. Yes, indeed. Yes, very heavy kind of MK Ultra influence here with the psychic driving tapes and so on, right? And the children kept in the remote room, subject to this cult's mind control experiences, trying to summon angels. But Sean said angels can't live in our world. And John Dee and Edward Kelly's angelic work becomes a very central part of this storyline. If you haven't seen this yet, please do. I'll try not to give anything away. It is great. I would put it up there. Well, I don't know if I'd put it up there with Stranger Things, but it's very, very good. And if you enjoy, you know, we did the live stream last year on A Dark Song. This would make an excellent companion to that. And I think it is of that caliber. So if you haven't watched Requiem on Netflix, please do. Please do. And again, Black Mirrors. So the whole storyline with John Dee and Kelly and their angelic workings is very, and Enochian, and so on and so forth, and shoe stones, and all those kind of things are very much part of this story. Please watch this. Please watch this. Very much worth watching. And like I said, I would like to do a live stream on this before the end of the month. So if we can get that in, that would be phenomenal. And we'll skip that because I don't want, that kind of gives away a plot line. I don't know why I don't know why I included that. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. That's a bit of a tell. Anyhow, here I am. Here I am. Here I am. Here I am. What does that sound like? What does that remind you of? Yes. Excellent. Classic. I would say this is a modern classic of folk horror and up there with the very best in the genre. And since we're just doing an introduction here, this is an introductory discussion here. We're not doing like a full Straduzzi, as they say. Yes, please watch this. You will not be sorry. Believe me, it is a slow burn, like so much folk horror is, but you will be blown away by how this all wraps up. The Ritual. So remember I told you about Deliverance. This is kind of like a more explicitly folk horror version of Deliverance. They should have gone to Las Vegas. Yes, they should have, indeed. And it's four friends traipsing off into the wilderness. In this case, they traipse off into Sweden, go on a hiking trip. A group of friends reunite after a long time to plan a vacation. They finally decide to go on a hiking trip in Sweden, Northern Europe. Bad idea. When one of them is injured, they have no choice but to cut through the forest in order to arrive at the lodge a couple hours sooner. During a raging rainstorm, they spend a night in a spooky abandoned house. Yes, gotta have those. What awaits them are things that they never expect out of this supposedly bonding trip. Yeah, so like I said, this is very much in the Deliverance mode, but in this case, the villains are not exactly love-struck hillbillies, but this godforsaken thing. Oh my God! Oh, this is, yeah, this is a dark one. Yeah, this is on Netflix as well if you want to watch it. Pretty dark stuff. Pretty dark stuff. Midsommar, Ari Aster. Yes. And this might be the, well, you know, she doesn't really have a happy time. You know, like I said, if you find yourself in a rural community being draped in garlands, things are not going to go well. Things could have gone a lot worse for her, but they don't go well. Hereditary. We might end up doing a live stream on this. This is, I wouldn't say that this is folk horror. This is more kind of classic occult horror with Toni Collette there. And that girl who looks much like the kid in Children of the Corn, as I said before. If you've seen Hereditary, you know how incredibly fucked up it is. So we'll just proceed. So these are the friends, go off on a hiking trip into Sweden. Again, like I said, bad idea. Yes, and that's Jack Rayner. Who did Jack Rayner play? He played Jack Parsons in Strange Angel. And he's got very strange physiology. I've got some questions about that man's origins, but that's a topic for another discussion. But go look at some pictures of Jack Rayner. Very interesting looking person. And of course, the cult. Yes, yes. It's always the cult and the crops and all that kind of stuff. And that the gods must be appeased and sinners and all that good stuff. You know, they look so pleasant and friendly and they have very dark intentions, do they not? Yes, indeed. It's interesting. They don't look exactly Swedish to me. They look more maybe more Dutch or Czech. I don't know. They don't look classically Swedish to me. Swedish people have a very distinctive look, and I wouldn't say, well, a couple of them do, but I wouldn't say these people look classically Swedish, but what do I know? I don't know much. And, you know, bad things happen, as you expect. Bad things happen. I'm just sort of touching on these things. This is just an introductory discussion. Probably some of these films we will do full live streams on, but this one we probably should. Now, this one, this is a more, I don't know if this is more obscure. This is released 2020. I am actually very, very fond of this film. A lot of people didn't seem to like it. Again, a very slow burn, but the point of this film that we'll get to in just a moment was very, very interesting to me. So an SAS interrogator, Special Air Services interrogator, played by Daniel Oldroyd, returns from Iraq in search for his lost sister, who mysteriously went missing around the time of a strange traditional festival called the Droving, which was invented for this movie. There isn't actually, as far as I can tell, the droving is when you drive cattle to market. Okay. But the villagers. This is shot in Cumbria in the Lake District in northern, the borderlands of northern England. Okay, and so this character here, played by Daniel Oldroyd again, is looking for his lost sister, and doesn't realize yet that she's been killed. Oh, was that a spoiler? Sorry. You can probably figure it out. But there are a lot of the classic folk horror tropes that this movie falls upon. The ending is very, very interesting. Very unexpected. I did not expect the ending. I won't give it away. You should probably watch this film. I won't spoil it for you, but I will tell you that one of the thing that I really like about this film, as opposed to a lot of these other films, is that you realize that the hero, this is the droving here. This is a shot, it's always these torches and, nighttime and everything, right? But very, very well shot, very interesting. And you believe that it's real. I mean, this film almost seems like very documentary in some ways. But the interesting thing about this film, again, the thing that really separates it from a lot of other folk horror movies is that you realize that the hero is the villain. Or not the villain, but he's a monster. And this is slowly revealed as the story goes on. So most folk horror stories, this guy would show up and he would sort of fall under the spell of some sort of charismatic village leader or priestess or something like that. That doesn't happen in this movie. What you realize is that he is the monster. He is the monster of this movie, and it's very, very, very well done, very well written, very well played. And the transformation that this man undergoes as this picture unfolds is bone chilling. And like I said, it feels very documentary, and in some ways it feels like you're almost in the room sometimes. You realize that he is a monster, and his past sort of shines a light on that he was involved in torturing prisoners of war in Iraq. So it is very, very dark and very chilling and very much worth watching. So don't believe all the nonsense that you read on IMDb. All right. And we talked about this. So this is... I'm just waiting for this to turn into a modern folk horror. We talked about this on the Burning Man live stream, the Beltane Fire Festival in Edinburgh, that just grows by leaps and bounds every year. Started off in the late 1980s and is actually these people go to town. They're not playing around. This is incredibly beautiful, but dark and scary. And if you told, somebody got into a time machine and came back here and said, "Hey, Chris, you know that Beltane Fire Festival in Edinburgh?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I know about it." And he'd be like, "Well, I'm from 2032, and they're just flat out killing people, just like, impaling them on sticks and lighting them on fire. I mean, just like flat out." I'd be like, "Yeah, I can kind of see that coming." I can kind of see that coming. Oh God, these are strange times indeed. And of course, the naked Scottish girls run around with their torches and red body paint, of course. I don't know. All this imagery is beautiful and very well made and very well done. But I'm just waiting for this to become a real life folk horror story because I feel like it's coming soon. Okay. I mean, just look at that. I mean, come on. This is not going anywhere good, folks. I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like a fuddy-duddy or a stuck in the mud, but this isn't going anywhere good. I mean, look at this though. My God. Oh, you know, if this was in America, this would look stupid and crappy. These Scottish guys and girls, they don't mess around. They really know what they're doing. This is real. And like I said, I'm just waiting for this to become a real life folk horror movie, because all the signs are pointing in that direction. All this imagery is very dark and death oriented. You can only play with that imagery for so long before it starts to take over. It's something you understand when you study synchromysticism. And to end our little review here, our friend Samantha is having her own little her own little folk horror. She's starring in a folk horror, kind of if you've seen the trailer on YouTube, it's very much a classic folk horror. Of course, it's on Paramount Plus, which I don't know anybody who has. Maybe a few Trekkies, I guess. But interestingly enough, just as an aside, Samantha Morton released a single 4 days ago, this past week, and it sounds. I think the way I described the A side is that it sounds like a drunk secretary covering Massive Attack's Teardrop at a karaoke bar. Okay, so make of that what you will. Okay, make of that what you will, and make of the fact that it was released this week as well, if you get the significance of that. All right, so sum it up. Folk horror. This is from the piece I wrote on a few years ago. Folk horror is an inherently pagan form, an immersion into the dark mysteries of the countryside. It feels deeply atavistic, like a twisted celebration of the pre-modern. The genre often seems to address a very human desire to belong to a tribe that's both nurturing and absolutely fearless, even when that tribe are presented as villains. But there's also that repressed impulse to bask in somebody else's sacrifice, to exercise that kind of complete control over life and death. And I think that is a major part of human sacrifice and ritual sacrifice in general. The feeling of power that it gives the people who partake in it, on the other side of the knife, right? Post-Enlightenment culture has worked around the clock to erase all of this from our firmware, but it only seems to have moved the pieces around the board. I wrote this 6 years ago. By contrast, neo-paganism was always going to be a non-starter because it pretended it could recapture the positive aspects of the old folkways and discard all that it found problematic. It also believed it could recreate the bonds of kith and kin in urban, or more accurately, suburban setting. That it could soak up all the richness and drama of the ancient paganism without getting its hands dirty, or more accurately, bloody. Getting its hands bloody. Folk horror dispenses with all that and reminds everyone that life and death were barely a whisper apart in the old days. That bloodshed was a daily fact of life back then. It's just the way things worked. So this is, I think, psychological, up their throat or whatever. After all, it wasn't so long ago that housewives killed their own chickens. A lot do still to this day, right? Maybe not in this country, but no one blinked at the sacrifice of a lamb or a piglet at even the swankiest mystery cult celebrations. Bacchanalias often ended with maenads ripping wild animals limb from limb. Maenad actually means raving one. Sacrifice was absolutely inseparable from belief. By contrast, neo-paganism feels more like a slightly more exotic form of Unitarianism, short on spectacle and sacrifice, and long on sanctimony. So, yes, like I said, the whole idea of paganism, real paganism, not neo-paganism, okay, was blood sacrifice. And if you look at the Yoruba traditions and so on, Santeria, voodoo, so on, blood sacrifice is still a major part of worship. Many other cultures, many other religious traditions. Okay, folk horror sort of allows people to immerse themselves in that without actually immersing themselves in it, so to speak. And anyway, that is the introduction to folk horror. Okay. Let's see here. Children of the Stones. Yes. Okay. All right. So yes, so that is our discussion. Like I said, this is just an introduction, and a lot of these things I want to have, I want to have full live streams on. I think some of them deserve it, and maybe some of them can be sort of bundled together. All right, but we are at the end. We are at the end of an era. Okay, and the old gods, as I keep trying to tell people, have reasserted themselves in a major way. And I think in certain circles, worship the old gods never abated. I would argue that in elite, as I've argued many times, that in elite circles, these strange old beliefs still hold sway. I think, as I've said, the Watcher cults offer, a very convenient venue to sort of tie in the old gods with bits from Christianity and so on. So this is all part, of the same kind of exegesis that we're looking at. We're looking at the changing beliefs, the changing customs, and how that corresponds to these non-human powers. Okay, and the influence and how this is going to affect our lives. And like I said, I mean, I remember, Gordon and I had a discussion a few years back, and we were trying to figure out like when you would actually have television shows with quote unquote mock human sacrifice. They might exist already. I don't know. But that's how it will all start. It will always start as art, as LARP, as play, as make pretend, but it always, I think, escalates, and it's just something that we really need to keep our eyes out for. Oh, anyway, but folk horror is fun, though. I mean, it's a way to sort of immerse yourself. It's almost like, I would argue, it's almost kind of like a homeopathic antidote. Like you're able to immerse yourself in these old ways of blood and pain, redemption, and the corn gods and the gods of the trees and the orchards and the sun and the sea, without actually immersing yourself in that. It's kind of like you can kind of see it. It's like you get a little bit of that toxin, a little bit of that poison in your system. And I would argue that in the best cases, in the best case analysis, that'll be kind of like a homeopathic remedy, because we all have these impulses. We all have to understand that we have dark animalistic impulses, right? The drive to survive and to will to power and competition and war and blood and sacrifice and death. I mean, these things have been part of the human condition forever. And we've learned in some cases to control those impulses. But as I said, I think that they are returning in many ways, and it's concerning to me. But maybe in light of the things that we're seeing now, that might be the least of our concerns. But But like I said, I've always taken kind of a dim view of neo-paganism, as it's called, because I understand real paganism. I understand what these folkways really were, and they weren't about Kool-Aid dye jobs and body positivity. They were about blood and death. And like I said, I mean, we're seeing all these cartels and so on engaging in human sacrifice, and they have been for quite some time now, Matamoros. So this is something that we all need to understand, and if nothing else, use that understanding to control these demons and impulses within ourselves, because, as I said before, I think they're kind of hardwired into the human animal. And unlike Satanists, right, I believe that we need to overcome those impulses. I don't know, about evolution or whatever, but we are very closely related to chimpanzees, right? I think we're just like a couple genes away, and we know, how they treat each other. Oh yeah. So this kind of homeopathic immersion, if handled right, I think can be a positive thing, because you can bring, it's like calling demons by their name and bringing them out. It's almost like an exorcism. And I think that immersion in kind of dark subject matter can, in the best circumstances, act as an exorcism. It's when you wallow in the darkness, when you wallow in the blood and the pain, that you start to have trouble. But I think ideally it's a kind of exorcism, a kind of homeopathic exorcism, where you recognize these impulses within yourself, bring them to light, and let them go. All right. So anyway, I'm going to wander into the comments now. I'm having a very hard time breathing. I'm sorry. If you notice, I've been a little subdued. Let's see here. That's not what I want. That is not what I want. All right, I'm going to refresh and have a drink. All right, where are we in the comments? Top chat. I don't want top chat. Cornfields and films are always gateways between dimensions. Excellent point. A very good point. The cult of Kybella is all over the airwaves these days. Are they not indeed? Children of the Stones. I believe that was a British production, I think. I haven't watched that in a while. I think I might have downloaded the videos from YouTube. I'm not sure. Oh, Deranged, 1974, about Ed Gein. Interesting. All right. We don't take kindly to strangers around here. There you go. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know why I just totally blanked out on that. I feel so stupid. Ray Winstone needs to narrate the Bible in audio form. That's an interesting take. I don't know if I would necessarily associate him with the Bible, but that's interesting. Tate's black outfit in Eye of the Devil was very similar to Julie Newmar's Catwoman outfit. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yes, Sharon Tate was initiated into witchcraft, or at least that's how the story goes. Ernest Borgnine and the Devil's Reign. That's a good one. I should dive back into that. Okay. Gosh, I have some gaps in the chat here. Is that what is going on here? Ronnie Cox. Yes, thank you. Poor Ronnie Cox, great actor. Been a lot of great. I always associate Ronnie Cox with Total Recall for some reason. Yes, sir. Okay. All right, let's try this again. Oh, do I believe false flag attacks are mimicking pagan sacrifices and showcasing via media as a means to get the mass audience? Yes, I do. I think I've kind of covered that in length. Yes, allegedly, right? Allegedly, I believe that. I believe that allegedly. Try warm lemon water with Celtic or Himalayan salt. Interesting. Interesting. I don't have lemons. I have Himalayan salt, but I don't have any lemons right now. Let's see here. All right, let me go into this here. Okay, just scrolling through here. Oh, yeah, City of the Dead, one of the few films where Lee spoke in an American accent. Also in Serial, if you've seen the movie Seril, Martin Mull, Tuesday Weld, Peter Boners, William Macy, Christopher Lee plays a this uptight businessman who's secretly the head, or at least on the weekends, he's the head of a gay biker gang. That is a fantastic movie. I really recommend that movie. Because, I mean, really, if you're brought up in that culture, right, you see these things as like redemptive, right? You see these as a net positive for the community. And that's the interesting thing that, in some of these storylines where these sacrifices are very willing, because they see themselves, it's all animistic, it's all, reincarnation and so on, which is covered, I think, pretty explicitly in Wicker Man. But they're all, willing sacrifices because they serve the community. I mean, that's something that we as moderns can't really understand, but it's almost like the same impulse as people who would like sign up, enlist to, join the Marines or something during the war. Peter Boner is a Bob Newhart. I think that's his real name. I don't think that's a stage name. I think it's like Hungarian or something. It's some sort of Eastern European name. Fascinated by all the people who get into ritualistic behavior with zero acknowledgement or awareness of what they're doing. Yes, and that's how you find yourself in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Absolutely. Okay. Marches and slogan chanting. Yes, which we saw a lot of today, didn't we? Oh my goodness. It's interesting because you could, in a modern context, you could draw like these people who become willing sacrifices in these sort of pagan rituals. You can draw a connection with suicide bombers and things like that. Oh, you are welcome, Lyle. Resident Evil 4 is a great folk horror atmosphere story game. Okay. I watched some of those early movies. I'm not, I stopped playing video games like 40 years ago, so I'm not really familiar with that. I think the last video game that I played regularly was Mrs. Pac-Man. I remember playing that at the movie theaters in Braintree. Oh, a long time ago. But I remember, like, in Pizza Hut, you go to Pizza Hut and you could play like Asteroids and Space Invaders while you were waiting for the pizza to arrive, because the games were built into the tables. Let's see here. So like I said, this was an introduction. I really want to do Requiem, so if you haven't seen it yet, please do. Any other questions or comments? I hope some of our overseas friends could make it. Oh man, that's bad. A lot of new movies for you to check out. Absolutely. Definitely. And the great thing is, a lot of these movies you can just watch on YouTube. There's a lot of, it's like there are almost too many movies that I want to watch on YouTube. Gets to, gets to the point that you don't know what to watch at all because you're just so overwhelmed by all the choices. Thank you, Krusty Breads. You're welcome, Lawrence. Thanksgiving up in Canada. Today's Thanksgiving up in Canada. Is that what it is? Canada? I know that it's different. Let me know. It's midnight here. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is. You're right. It's the witching hour. Am I familiar with the movie 1983 movie Eyes of Fire? No, I haven't. Terrence Malick made a folk horror movie. That's interesting. Interesting. There are a lot of kind of folk horror worthy visuals in Days of Heaven, which is one of my top 10 favorite movies ever. Yes. Yeah. Do you remember when Michael calls? Oh man, Michael calls, which isn't, it's kind of like fake folk horror, so to speak. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just wish I could, I wish my breathing was a little better today. I'm having a bit of semi-anaphylaxis, let's just say. Not doing my best today. All right. Wow. Heavy Canadian contingent today. Awesome. Welcome to all my Canuck friends. Please get rid of Justin Trudeau. Okay. All right. When Michael Douglas calls, Andy my Helen. Brilliant. Oh my God, that's brilliant. Andy my Helen. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're an old one like me. You're an old one like me. At least I'm assuming that. Thank you, Brandon. I will. I just, pollen is just completely out of control. Completely out of control. Fidel's son. Actually, I would bet good money that he is not Fidel's son, but he is definitely Fidel's son in spirit, but just not genetically. Definitely in spirit. No question about it. You are much appreciated. Excellent as always. Hope I feel better soon. Thank you, Jazz. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Longest prime minister now. Longest? Tallest? Or longest serving? That's despicable. That man is awful. Oh. Alrighty. I'm going to stop the stream.